What is up, guys? Over the course of this week, we're going to be looking at tier lists for each role in patch 4.14. Now remember that this list is my opinion and it's made up of the champions that I think are the best and will win you the most games in solo queue. Last time I did this, you guys said that you wanted more detail when explaining champions. So, you know, I aim to please and this is pretty in depth. So jumping straight in, this number 5 spot was actually really close between Jinx and Caitlyn, but I decided to go with Jinx. Now, in all honesty, they are probably the same power level roughly, just in different ways. The reason I went with Jinx here is because she snowballs hard, which I think is better for this meta, and is reflected in a higher win rate as well. So Jinx has a great attack speed steroid or increased range, okay laning, but a really good mid and late game, a surprising amount of kill potential with her ultimate, and even some CC with her chompers. I'm going to mention this a lot in this video, but snowballing from bot lane is a big part of how you play now. There's a lot more grouping early, and Jinx excels at getting a small lead and making it bigger and bigger. Her minigun scales really well, and her rocket form means that she can stay safe further back and deal good AoE damage, especially with those AoE crits from getting an infinity edge. The good thing about Jinx is that it's actually really hard to shut her down. You can't really zone from experience anymore, and she can farm from range with her rocket form, and her minigun is great for CSing under turret. The main problem with Jinx has always been that she has no escape, and that is by far the biggest reason why she isn't higher on this list. She has the capability to carry and take over an entire game, but it's only if the enemy team isn't able to jump onto you. In solo queue, I think she's probably one of the riskier picks on this list, in lane and in teamfights I guess. You have to be able to position well, like in both, and avoid the enemy's CC, but if you do manage to do that, then you're going to deal a crap ton of damage. Now build wise, rushing an infinity edge is going to be the best option in 99% of your games. After that, you really just want to make those crits hit even harder, so get a Phantom Dancer first, and then a Bloodthirster or a Last Whisper depending on how much armor the enemy team have. Now those 4 items should be your core in pretty much every game, and considering you have no escape, it's normally wise to round off your build with a defensive item like Banshees or a Guardian Angel. As a quick note, Blade of the Ruined King isn't too bad on her because it's kind of semi-offense and semi-defense with a bit of peel, but you won't really be in range to use the active often, so it's definitely not core. Now number 4 we have Lucian, and considering he used to hold the top spot, he's fallen from grace pretty hard. He's still good in lane, but he's nowhere near as strong as he was before. His low range means that you have to be a lot more careful about choosing the right trades, and it's moved his playstyle into more of an all-in short burst trades rather than just poking with your passive. Now don't get me wrong, I mean you can still win your lane, it's just harder than it was before. His mid to late game damage is still very high, his ultimate packs a huge punch onto tanks with that Ghostblade build, and he probably has the highest mobility out of any AD. What I really want to point out, and why he's number 4 on this list in my opinion, is that he can still be extremely effective, but he can be bullied in lane pretty easily now. Now you need to be good with him to win games and to win trades in lane, and by that I mean you can't really afford to fall behind early because he doesn't really have any kind of recovery mechanic. Now there are 3 builds that I think you can go on Lucian, so getting an infinity edge first means that you will be pretty good in teamfights, and late game you'll be doing more damage, but you are nowhere near as good at killing a single target. Now getting a Blade of the Ruined King is probably the most common build right now I'd say, and this makes your ultimate hit a lot harder as well as your passive autos. Now this build is great for one-on-one fights, and it will give you more kill potential in lane because Blade of the Ruined King obviously can be bought cheaper. Now finally, getting a Triforce is uncommon, but it's still actually pretty good. This build is only really good when you're ahead because of how expensive it is, but I'd argue that this will probably give you the most damage output late game. Taking the 3rd spot is going to be Kog'Maw, and the first thing I want to say is if this was a competitive tier list like for the LCS, then he'd be number 1. He has a ton of damage throughout the game. He shreds tanks, the meta items that fit him perfectly. He has a long range snipe with his ultimate, an armor shred, percentage health damage. Like, what more could you want from an AD? Well, you know what? I'm going to tell you. You want an escape. That's why he's only number 3 on this list. He has a pretty rough lane phase early, but as soon as you get your Phage and Sheen, you can start to do some serious damage. Now in my opinion, he only needs that one item, a Triforce, to be effective, and that's really good in this meta of early grouping. His lane phase isn't terrible. I mean, his W costs no mana, so you don't have to ever worry about trading or farming with it, and the good thing is that it leaves your mana pool open for your Q and E to farm with. So when your W is down, you only have those two abilities to help you CS, and it's one of the reasons why it's quite hard to shut down a cog completely, because he can farm from range. Also remember that a lot of games are going on longer and longer now with the current meta, so as long as you farm, you always stand a chance of carrying the game. The two biggest drawbacks to playing Cog are that it's hard to lane early with him, especially against a lane bully, and that he has no escape, so if your team don't protect you mid-game, it's very hard to do anything. These two downsides shouldn't stop you from playing him at all. He's still a great AD right now, he's still number 3, they are just the reason I value the other two picks above him in solo queue. There are so many build paths for Cog, but I'm going to show you the one I always use. So Triforce gives Cog a lot of damage, more kite potential, and even makes him a bit tankier. Basically, it's everything he wants, and none of the Triforce stats are wasted, so it's really gold efficient. Now after that, you can either go for Blade to dual tanks or Infinity Edge for more raw power. I think these four are your core items regardless really, and then you can go and round out the build with some defense or a Phantom Dancer for even more damage. Taking the number 2 spot is someone who you probably didn't expect, and that's going to be Corki. Now despite his Q looking like a Pokemon ability, and oh my god I hate that, but he's always been strong, and with the nerf to Lucian he's come back to the top. Corki has a great lane phase, a great mid game, and still an okay late game too. His poke seriously hurts early, he can beat all of the popular ADs in lane, and he's extremely safe as well. Now Corki is a very simple champion, like his trade combo is just auto attack and Q and firing missiles, but he has a good mix of AD and magic damage and can snowball a lead very easily. Snowballing in this case is a little bit different because Corki will almost always get ahead in lane, and honestly just give him a shot. I think you'll be surprised how strong his lane phase actually is. The one downside to Corki really is that if you get behind on him, which is pretty tough to do honestly, then you're going to struggle to get back into the game. He needs items to do damage, and simply if you don't have those items then you're going to be useless. Build wise, there are kind of a few variations around a core build. So the Koreans are building Triforce, Blade of the Ruined King and Last Whisper as core, and this is really aimed at being able to fight tanky targets and coming out on top. The other option is more of a teamfight heavy build I guess for the squishy targets with Triforce, Infinity Edge, Bloodthirster and Last Whisper. This is going to make your Q do a huge amount of damage, and it's really good against teams with no real tank. So yep, you've guessed it, the number 1 spot here belongs to Tristana. Though this hasn't happened overnight either. I've been saying for a long time she's been strong, but just lacks that kind of certain something to come back into the meta, and well, a bunch of things changed here to make her super strong. To sum up the big ones, her Q no longer costs mana, her E range now scales with your basic attack range, making your combos super easy, and the Infinity Edge changer also helped a lot. She's really just the complete package right now. She has a really high range, an attack speed steroid, a knockback, an escape, a pretty good lane phase, and even her mid game isn't as bad anymore with the item changes. To sum this up, like whenever I play against a Tristana, I always joke with people about the current Tristana syndrome. Now what I mean is, like, no matter how you do, no matter how hard you beat her in lane, she always manages to pick up kills and snowball anyway. Tristana offers everything you want in an AD carry, and when you get to team fights, if you're fed, which you probably are, you will basically win them by yourself. It's so hard to get onto her with her range and escape, and she does so much damage that you can't ignore her and kill other people either. One thing I do want to point out with Tristana is that I find it best to put 3 points into your E for lane and then switch over to maxing your Q. So this will give you a maxed out Q around the same time you start to properly teamfight and just increases your overall damage. So build wise, there are a couple of options, but really they are the same items in a different order. So Static Shift first gives you wave clear, trade potential in lane earlier, and somewhat makes up for your crappy mid game. So in short, this is the option I like to go for if I'm doing average or if I'm not super fed. Now you can also get an Infinity Edge first and then Shiv after. This will give you way more damage, but it does delay your power spike as Infinity Edge costs almost 1300 gold more. It also doesn't let you do as much damage for having a single item unless you start maxing your Q a little earlier, so in this case you'd probably only put 1 or 2 points into your E and then just max your Q. So that wraps up the top 5 champions, but one champion I do want to mention is Ezreal. Now Ezreal is one of the most popular ADs in Korea right now, and he's actually very effective if used properly. He has a lot of damage with his ultimate and Q, but it's sometimes not noticeable if you fall behind or don't hit many Qs in a row. I honestly think that's the biggest thing. If you are good at hitting your Qs consistently, then Ezreal is a very good champion, but if you aren't, then he kinda just sucks. I wanted to mention him because I think if you're good with him, kinda like how if you're good with Draven, then you can easily carry a game, and he could easily be in this top 5. I do just want to point out that there are a lot of other ADs that are viable right now, and as I said, these mentioned in the video are just the best for winning solo queue. So I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I'm hoping to do one of these for every role this week, so I will catch you in my next video.